Hi, I'm Maria. Before I continue, please like and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with more stories like mine. Life as a nurse is never boring, and neither is being a mom of two. Every day, I switch roles from caring for patients to nurturing my kids, especially my teenager, Emily. At 16, she's at that age where boundaries are constantly tested, and every no feels like a challenge. Despite the occasional teen drama, I've always believed in fostering a home environment built on honesty and accountability. One crisp Thursday evening, after a long shift at the hospital, I returned home to the usual chaos. Dinner half prepared, homework papers scattered everywhere, and Emily glued to her phone, texting nonstop on the couch. It wasn't until I went to my bedroom to put away the day's tips that I noticed something was off. My wallet felt lighter. A couple of $100 were missing, the kind of money you don't just misplace. I walked back to the living room and casually asked, have you seen some money I left in my purse? It seems to be missing. Emily barely glanced up from her phone, her voice hesitant. I meant to ask you about that. I needed some cash for a school project. You took it without asking, Emily. My tone was more of disappointment than anger. She sighed a little too dramatically. Mom, it was urgent and you were at work. I was going to tell you. That's not how we handle urgent matters, Emily. We don't just take things, I replied, trying to stay calm. You're grounded for the weekend. No going out with your friends. But that's so unfair, Emily protested, jumping to her feet. It's just money, and I was going to tell you. It's not about the money, it's about trust and respect. The argument escalated as her protests grew louder, but I stood firm. Grounding her felt like a mild punishment for breaking trust. Later, as I prepared dinner, trying to shake off the weight of our confrontation, Rick stormed in. His face was dark with anger, a look I knew all too well. You're grounding her for taking a little cash? Seriously, Maria? Rick's voice was steeped in disbelief as he threw his keys on the table. It's not about the amount, Rick. It's about honesty and consequences, I countered, feeling the tension rise between us. That's just your way of controlling her, like you try to control everything in this house. I sighed, trying to keep my cool. This isn't about control. It's about teaching our daughter the right values. Rick scoffed, pacing back and forth. Oh, and you're the perfect role model by what? Grounding her over every little mistake. Every little mistake. Emily admitted she took the money without asking. That's not a little mistake, that's stealing. He stopped pacing and glared at me. And you think you're perfect? Never done anything wrong. I shook my head, frustrated. This isn't about me. Why do you always make it about anything but the issue at hand? Because you make everything about rules and punishments. Maybe if you weren't so harsh, she wouldn't feel the need to hide things from us. Or maybe she would understand boundaries and respect if her father supported her mother in disciplining her when it's necessary. Rick's face turned red, his breathing grew heavier. You're turning my kids against me, Maria. You're painting me as the bad guy because I don't jump on your strict parenting bandwagon. Nobody is turning anyone against you. You're doing that all by yourself by undermining me in front of them. That's because you're unreasonable, he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. You want to control everything and everyone. That's not true, and deep down you know it. I'm trying to be a responsible parent, Rick. By what? Alienating your daughter? You think she's going to trust you? After this, I felt a pang in my heart. I'm her mother. It's my job to teach her right from wrong, and it's my job to protect her from your extreme measures. Extreme? Teaching our daughter that actions have consequences is extreme now. Rick's voice rose, and he looked like he was about to explode. You're impossible. And you're not helping by arguing with every decision I make, I shot back. Suddenly, his hand flew out, striking me across the face. The force knocked me back, and pain radiated from my cheek. For a moment, there was stunned silence as we both realized what had just happened. I touched my cheek, the sting sharp and immediate. You hit me. Rick's eyes widened, perhaps surprised by his own actions. Maria, I didn't. You did. I interrupted, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. You just hit me. Our younger son, Jacob, peeked from behind the hallway corner, his eyes wide. Mom, are you okay? I quickly wiped my face, trying to shield him from any more of this ugliness. Yes, honey, I'm fine. Go back to your room, please. Jacob hesitated, his gaze shifting between Rick and me. "Jacob, please," I urged, my voice softer. Reluctantly, he turned and disappeared back into his room. Turning back to Rick, I found my voice firmer, more determined. "This can't go on. You need help, Rick. You can't just—" He cut me off, his own voice breaking. "Maria, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me, but—" "Sorry isn't enough this time," I said quietly, the resolve building inside me. "This changes everything." As Rick stood there, looking lost and confused, I knew that this moment was a turning point. I needed to protect myself and my children, no matter what that meant for the future of our family. Sitting in the break room at the hospital, I poured my heart out to Linda, my colleague and closest confidant. The walls adorned with health posters felt like they were closing in on me as I recounted last night's horror. "Rick hit me, Linda, right in front of Jacob," I whispered, the words heavy with shame and disbelief. Linda's expression hardened. "This has gone too far, Maria. You can't let him get away with this." "I know, but I feel so lost. It's like I don't even know who he is anymore," I admitted, the confusion and hurt swirling inside me. "It's not just last night, is it? There have been other signs, haven't there?" Linda's voice was gentle, coaxing the buried truths out of me. I nodded, memories flooding back. There were times when he'd lose his temper over nothing. He'd decide things without asking me, convincing me it was for the best. "And you believed him because you wanted to keep the peace," Linda concluded. "Exactly. I thought they were isolated incidents, but now, seeing them all together—" I trailed off, the pattern too clear to ignore. Linda leaned forward, her resolve palpable. "You need to document everything, Maria. Every incident, no matter how small it seemed at the time." Taking her advice to heart, I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I spoke to Emily and Jacob, who reluctantly shared their own observations of their father's erratic behavior. Emily confessed, "He always said it was our little secret, not to upset you with the small stuff." And by small stuff, he meant his bursts of anger. I pressed gently. Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I didn't want to make things worse, Mom." Realizing the extent of Rick's manipulation, I felt a surge of protectiveness. "This ends now. We're safer knowing the truth." I dug deeper, finding emails where Rick had belittled my concerns about family finances or decisions about the kids' education. Each email, each testimonial from my children, added to the growing dossier of Rick's controlling nature. Back at work, I showed Linda my findings. She pored over the documents with a furrowed brow. "This is more than enough for a strong case against him, Maria. Whether it's for custody, a restraining order, or whatever you decide you need." "I just want to keep my children safe," I said, my voice firm with newfound determination. "And you will," Linda assured me. "You're doing the right thing. Gathering all this shows you're not just reacting to one bad night, you're responding to a pattern of behavior that's harmful to you and your kids." Empowered by Linda's support and the evidence laid out before me, I knew I was on the right path. I knew what I had to do next. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't walking it alone. The truth about Rick, once obscured by the facade of a temper barely kept in check, was now starkly clear. With that clarity came the path forward to protect my family and end the cycle of manipulation and fear. Armed with the truth and a folder thick with evidence, I confronted Rick in our living room, a space that had seen both the joys and shadows of our family life. "Rick, we need to talk about what's been happening," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This can't continue, not just for my sake, but for our children's." He looked at me, wary but defiant. "What are you talking about, Maria?" "The manipulation, the anger, the assault," I said, laying the papers on the coffee table. "It all ends today." He scoffed, glancing at the documents. "You think you can just end things, just like that?" "Yes, Rick, just like that." I was firm, my resolve unshakable. "I'm filing for divorce, and I've spoken to a lawyer. Everything, your actions, your words, they are all documented." Rick's face paled. "You're serious?" "Very serious," I replied. "I've tolerated enough for the sake of what I thought was a partnership, but that's not what this is." As the reality settled in for him, I continued, "I've also shared everything with the people who needed to know, your colleagues, our neighbors. Not to slander you, but to protect myself and our kids." "You wouldn't dare," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. I already have, and the community has been more supportive than you think. I added, the strength of the collective backing me felt empowering. In the following days, Rick faced the consequences. His workplace conducted its own inquiry, and the disdain from our community was palpable. Friends we had known for years looked at him differently. Whispers followed him around, and his professional reputation took a hit from which it wouldn't easily recover. During this time, I worked on securing a stable and peaceful environment for Emily and Jacob. The local community center provided resources, and neighbors who once only greeted us in passing came forward with meals, words of support, and offers to help with the kids. One evening, sitting in the quiet of a home that no longer housed fear, I reflected on the journey. The peace was new, delicate, but promising. I watched Emily and Jacob playing in the yard, their laughter a balm to the many wounds we'd endured. I realized then, looking at their carefree smiles, that this was what liberation felt like. It wasn't just the absence of Rick and his oppressive shadow, but the presence of community, of hope, and the reclaiming of my own strength. In that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Better than okay. We were going to thrive. The struggle had been harrowing, the decisions painful but necessary. As I watched my children play, I felt a profound sense of triumph. This wasn't just a victory for me, but for Emily and Jacob too. We had escaped a cycle of toxicity, and while the road ahead would have its own challenges, we would face them as a family of three, supported by a community that had shown us we were not alone. Rick's downfall was of his own making, his actions the architect of his demise. As he faced the cold reality of his choices, I embraced the warmth of a new beginning, surrounded by love and support. For the first time in a long time, I looked toward the future with hope, not fear, confident in the knowledge that we had not just survived, but were finally free to live. That brings us to the end of Maria's journey as she rebuilds her life with her children and finds support in her community. It raises an important question about handling toxic relationships, especially when they're within the family. What would you do if you were in Maria's position? Would you take the same steps or handle it differently? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. It's crucial to talk about these situations openly to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Your input can make a big difference. And if you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more discussions like this. Your support helps us keep these important conversations going. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to your comments. Hi, I'm Mara. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from my life. Now let's get into it. It's one of those mornings where an extra cup of coffee is non-negotiable. The sunlight barely filters through the closed blinds, as if trying not to disturb the fragile peace in our home. Here, in the quiet corner of the kitchen, I find a moment of solace with my medication lined up next to my mug, each pill a small promise of normalcy in my otherwise chaotic health journey. Ethan, have you seen my new prescription bottle? I call out, scanning the countertop. From the hallway, his voice echoes back, a mix of urgency and concern. I haven't touched it, Mara. Maybe check in the bathroom again. His suggestion sends me on a fruitless search through our small, cluttered apartment. Bathroom cabinets, bedroom nightstands, even under the couch. Places that have become all too familiar hiding spots for my essentials, especially when his mother visits. Your mom called last night, didn't she? I asked, my voice heavy with more than just curiosity as I confront Ethan in the living room. He pauses, a frown creasing his usually light features. Yeah, she did, Mara. She's just worried about us, about how much you're relying on those meds. Worried, or does she still think I'm faking it? The bitterness in my voice surprises even me. But it's hard to keep the edge out when Dorothy's disbelief has been a constant shadow over our marriage. Ethan sighs, running a hand over his face. She's from a different time, thinks differently, but she loves us, Mara. Does she love us, or does she love controlling us, Ethan? I press, not willing to back down. Every time she wades into our lives, I feel like I'm the one drowning. He steps closer, his intent to comfort clear. But his next words falter on his lips as if unsure. Mara, she suggested. Suggested what? My heart races, a mix of fear and anger simmering just below the surface. That maybe you try a few weeks without the meds, to prove to her you're really sick. The room spins a bit, and I steady myself against the back of the sofa. And you told her what? That her unlicensed, unmedical opinion is more important than my doctor's. It's not like that, he insists. She thinks it's all in your head, Anne. And you didn't defend me? The accusation hangs heavy between us. I did, Mara. I always do. It's just hard, you know. His plea is sincere, his conflict obvious, but it's not enough to soothe the sting of betrayal. Hard for you or hard for me? I challenge, the pills in my hand, now a symbol of the battles I face, both seen and unseen, because right now it feels like I'm fighting this on my own. Ethan's shoulders slump, his usual resolve melting under the weight of our reality. I'm sorry, Mara. I'll talk to her again. I'll fix this. As he leaves for work, the promise lingers but does little to quell the turbulence left in his wake. I turn back to my pill organizer, the neat rows of capsules now blurred through the tears welling in my eyes. Here, in the quiet aftermath of our morning skirmish, I brace myself for the upcoming medical review and the ever-looming presence of Dorothy in our lives. Her skepticism a constant echo in our conversations. But as I stand resolute, I know this. I will fight for my health, with or without their belief, because in this battle, the truest victory is survival, and I intend to survive. You didn't. Please tell me you didn't just throw them away. I say, my voice a mix of disbelief and rising panic. I had to, Mara. Mom was so certain. You know how she gets. She thought if you went without them and nothing changed, she'd see she was wrong. Ethan's words tumble out in a rushed whisper, his face a portrait of regret. And you thought gambling with my health was the way to prove a point to your mother. The room feels colder, the walls inching closer as my heart hammers against my ribs. It's not like that. I just wanted peace, Mara, for all of us. He reaches out, but I step back, my trust fraying like worn fabric. Peace? By making me stick. You call that peace, Ethan? My laugh is hollow bitter as I back away from him. I'm sorry, I didn't think. No, you didn't think. That's exactly right. My words slice through the tense air, my anger sharpening them like knives. And now, without my meds, I'm spiraling. Do you get that? Spiraling, Ethan. He sinks into the couch, his hands buried in his hair, the weight of his choice pressing down on him visibly. I can fix this. I'll get new ones, talk to the doctor, whatever it takes. And what about her, Ethan? What about Dorothy? When do you stop letting her puppeteer our lives? My question hangs heavy between us, loaded with years of her interference. I don't know. Well, think fast, because I'm not going to sit around being your mother's experiment. I'm pacing now, each step releasing a fraction of the storm inside me. The next day, while Ethan's at work, I find the old tape recorder, dusty but functional. It feels deceitful, underhanded even, but what choice do I have? I tuck it into the lining of my purse, a small bulge of betrayal and necessity. At dinner, Dorothy is all smiles and passive-aggressive jabs. Feeling better today, dear? You look, well, the same. Her eyes gleam with unspoken accusations. Funny, isn't it? How some illnesses don't have faces. You never know the battle someone's fighting just by looking at them. My tone is casual, but my fingers twitch around the purse strap. Oh, I can imagine, Dorothy says, her voice dripping with false sweetness. So many people these days claim things just for attention. Not that I'm saying you are, dear, but it does make you wonder. Her words are sugared poison. It does make you wonder who you can really trust. I reply, my voice steady as the recorder silently captures every venom-laced word. Trust is important, you know. Ethan trusts me. He knows I only want what's best for him, for you both. Her voice is too smooth, too calculated. And what you think is best is what matters, right, Dorothy? Even if it's not actually what's best for us? I challenge, steering the conversation like a pilot navigating stormy skies. Well, I am his mother. Who knows him better than me? Her laugh, light and chilling, fills the dining room, the recorder catching every bit of condescension, manipulation, and her blatant disregard for my well-being. Dinner with Dorothy is a masterclass in endurance, each course served with a side of insinuations. Really, Mara, all these medications, it's more mental, don't you think? A crutch, she says, her voice syrupy sweet, her words dipped in venom. Sometimes what we perceive as mental is just misunderstood. I counter smoothly, my fingers brushing against the recorder, ensuring it's still capturing every word. Oh, misunderstandings are common in families. But we're family now, aren't we? We can be honest here. A smirk plays on Dorothy's lips, the kind that tells me she's enjoying this far too much. Honesty's a two-way street, I reply, keeping my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. The meal drags on, with Dorothy dancing around her true intentions, veiling her digs and Fox's concern. But as we linger over dessert, her guard drops just enough, coaxed by the false security of the familial setting. Ethan told me he helped you cleanse from those pesky pills. It's for the best, really, you'll see. Everyone will see soon enough that you've been just fine without them. Her grin is all teeth, no warmth. I feel a cold shiver down my spine, but I maintain my composure. And if I'm not just fine, I ask, my tone deceptively calm, then I suppose you'll have proven me wrong, but we both know that won't happen, Dorothy. Her confidence is infuriating, but it's exactly what I need on tape. The next morning, my body betrays me. The lack of proper medication takes its toll, leaving me writhing on the floor, clutching my chest, gasping for breath. Ethan finds me, panic etched across his face as he dials for an ambulance. His mother's theories are far from his mind in the face of stark reality. In the sterile white of the hospital room, hooked to monitors and IVs, I make my plans. The recording is safe, tucked away, a silent ace up my sleeve. Ethan sits beside me, his eyes hollow with worry. I can't believe this happened, Mara. I should have never listened to her, he says, his voice breaking, laden with guilt. We can't change the past, but we can affect the future. It starts with facing the truth together. I reach for his hand, the recorder now burning a hole in my purse, metaphorically speaking. What do you mean? Ethan's brow furrows as his gaze meets mine. I recorded everything, Ethan. Every word your mother said about my illness, about the medication. It's time we confronted her with proof. My voice is firm, resolve steeled by nights of pain and betrayal. You recorded, Mom. His initial shock morphs into understanding, the pieces falling into place. Mara, if this is what it takes, then let's do it. Let's stop this once and for all. With legal counsel briefed and strategies laid out, the confrontation is inevitable. Dorothy arrives punctually, her demeanor composed, until we play the recording. The playback echoes through the room, her own words revealing the true nature of her intentions. This is out of context, she protests, her voice cracking as her carefully constructed facade begins to crumble. She stammered, the facade crumbling as she faced not just me, but an irrefutable betrayal of her own making. There's no context that justifies what you've done, Dorothy. I trusted you. We trusted you. And you endangered my life for what? To prove a point. Ethan's voice was steady, but the disappointment was palpable. The legal threats were clear. Her actions were not just morally reprehensible, but criminally liable. As Dorothy realized the gravity of the situation, her bluster deflated, replaced by a rare, reluctant silence. Sitting there, in that charged atmosphere of reckoning, the path forward became clearer than it had ever been. This battle, born from whispered conspiracies and cruel intentions, would end with the truth laid bare in justice, though delayed, ready to be served. This is it, Ethan. Today, we set things right, I said firmly as we sat across from Dorothy in the small, stark conference room of our lawyer's office. The air was tense, charged with the impending confrontation. Dorothy sat rigidly, her usual demeanor of control slipping as she glanced between Ethan and me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. I don't understand why we're here like this, Ethan, darling. What is this all about? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan's response was measured, but I could hear the tremble in his voice. Mom, it's about what you've done. Mara, play the recording. I nodded, pressing the play button on the recorder. Dorothy's voice filled the room, stark against the backdrop of her current vulnerable state. I told Ethan to get rid of those pills, her voice echoed, condemning her as the reality of her words settled in. Dorothy's face paled, her eyes darting to Ethan, searching for some sign of support, but there was none. Ethan, I was just worried. I didn't mean. You didn't mean what, Mom? To hurt me? To nearly kill my wife? Ethan's voice rose, a crescendo of pain and betrayal. How could you? How could you play with Mara's life like that? Dorothy stammered, her composure cracking. I thought it was for the best. I didn't believe she was really sick. I thought she was lying, taking you away from me. By risking her life? No, Mom, that's not concern. That's control, and it's wrong. Ethan's declaration was a barrier she couldn't cross. Miss Patel, our lawyer, interjected, her tone professional but stern. Mrs. Dorothy, we have enough here for a serious legal case, emotional abuse, endangerment, manipulation. What do you have to say for yourself?" Dorothy's voice was barely a whisper, her usual fire reduced to embers. "I am sorry. I was wrong. Can we fix this?" "Sorry doesn't change what you did. We're moving forward with the charges," I said, not out of vengeance but out of necessity. The need for accountability was crystal clear. The legal discussions that followed were a blur, with terms like settlement and restraining orders tossed around. Dorothy agreed to a settlement, the terms strict and non-negotiable. She was to pay for all medical expenses and damages, a financial acknowledgement of her physical and emotional trespasses. As we left the office, Ethan took my hand, his grip tight. "Mara, I'm so sorry for everything, for not standing by you sooner. It's going to take time, Ethan. A lot of it. But today was a good first step." I replied, my words not just for him, but for myself as well, a reminder of the path forward. "I know, and I'm here for all of it. We'll rebuild together." Ethan's promise rang with a sincerity that had been missing before. The weight of his mother's influence finally lifted. In the days that followed, my health began to stabilize, my body no longer a battleground for familial warfare, but a testament to resilience. I started attending therapy, both individual and couples, with Ethan, each session a brick in the foundation we were rebuilding. Life settled into a new rhythm, one where my voice was heard and my health prioritized. Ethan and I grew closer, the scars of the past slowly healing into lessons for the future. And as I reclaimed my health and our life together, I knew this: I was no longer just a survivor, but a victor. My spirit and body were no longer shackled by deceit, but lifted by truth and justice. The story has reached its conclusion, and Mara's struggle for justice has unfolded. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Mara's shoes, would you have gone as far as recording a private conversation to expose the truth? Or would you have chosen a different path to prove your point? Your opinions are valuable, and I'm really interested in seeing different perspectives on handling such a delicate situation. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing tales. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to life. Hi, I'm Emily. Marrying Mark Turner felt like stepping into another universe. His family, the Turners, were the epitome of high society. Wealthy, influential, and to an outsider, intimidating. Their estate was a sprawling masterpiece, with every inch meticulously manicured and every room a testament to their wealth. Walking through those halls, I felt like a character in a movie. It was breathtaking and, admittedly, a bit overwhelming. In the beginning, I was naively optimistic, believing that love was enough to bridge the gap. But the Turners had their own rules, their own way of doing things. It was like an unspoken game, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. David, Mark's older brother, was the ringleader. He had this way of making you feel insignificant without raising his voice. "So, Emily, this must be a big change from where you grew up, huh?" he would say, his voice dripping with condescension, his eyes scanning me like I was an exhibit. I tried to laugh it off, replying, "Every day is an adventure, David. I'm just trying to keep up." Then there were the dinners, where every word felt like a test, and every silence was loaded with meaning. Mrs. Turner, with her piercing gaze, always found a way to remind me of my humble origins. "It's so brave of you, Emily, to step into our world. Not everyone can adapt to such refinement," she'd say. But I was determined not to let them get to me. I wanted to prove that I was more than what they saw, more than just the girl from the other side of the tracks who had managed to snag the good son of a wealthy family. Then I found out I was pregnant. Suddenly, there was this flicker of hope. Maybe this baby would be the bridge between me and the Turners, something that would soften them and make them see me as one of their own. When I told Mark, his face lit up as if I had just handed him the world. "We're going to have a baby, Em. Can you believe it? You're going to be an amazing mom," he said. I clung to that optimism, thinking maybe, just maybe, this baby could change everything. But life has a way of not playing by your rules. Instead of bringing the family closer, the news of my pregnancy seemed to light the fuse of an already ticking bomb. The Turners had always been about wealth and inheritance, and my baby represented a shift in the balance they weren't ready for. David's animosity became more apparent. It started subtly, a snide comment here, a backhanded compliment there. "A baby, huh? Dad's going to have to rethink his will now. Congratulations, Emily, he said once, his smile not reaching his eyes. The tension in the house grew thicker each day. I tried to keep my distance, but living under the same roof felt like being constantly watched by vultures, waiting for a carcass. One day, it all came crashing down. Mark was delayed at work, and I was alone with Mrs. Turner and David. The air felt heavy, charged with unspoken anger and resentment. The confrontation started over something trivial. I think I had moved a vase to dust around it, but it escalated quickly. "You think you can just come in here and change everything?" David's voice was cold, his eyes flashing with anger. "I was just cleaning, David. I didn't mean to upset anyone," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Cleaning? Or snooping around? We know your game, Emily. You're nothing but a gold digger trying to secure your child's future at our expense." Mrs. Turner chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt trapped, the walls of the opulent living room closing in on me. "That's not true. I love Mark, and this baby, our baby, is a blessing," I managed to say, but my voice was trembling. Then it happened. In a moment of rage, David stepped forward and pushed me. I fell hard onto the ground. The pain was immediate, and I knew something was terribly wrong. I lay there, cradling my stomach, as David and Mrs. Turner stood over me. There was a moment of shock on their faces, but no remorse. "Look what you made me do," David muttered, more to himself than to me. When Mark finally came home, he found me in a state of shock, bruises forming, tears streaming down my face. Between sobs and gasps of pain, I told him everything. Mark's reaction was a mix of horror, anger, and disbelief. He helped me up, his arms around me, his eyes burning with fury. "We're leaving, Emily, tonight. I won't let them hurt you or our baby anymore." We packed in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. As we drove away from the Turner estate, I felt a sense of relief mixed with deep, overwhelming sadness. But the worst was yet to come. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed our fears. We had lost the baby. The fall, the trauma, it was too much. Lying in that hospital bed with Mark by my side, everything felt surreal. The Turners, their estate, the wealth, none of it mattered anymore. All I could think about was the baby we lost, the future we had dreamed of, gone in an instant. Leaving the Turner estate was like stepping out of a storm into an uncertain calm. Mark and I were broken, trying to piece together our lives after the loss. We moved into a small apartment, a stark contrast to the grandeur we had left behind, but it became our sanctuary. Those first few weeks were tough. Mark threw himself into work, while I struggled to find my footing in a world that suddenly felt so different. We talked less, the silence between us filled with the unspoken grief of what we had lost. But amidst our sorrow, there was a glimmer of light. Mark's father, Mr. Turner. He was the antithesis of the rest of his family. Where they were cold, he was warm. Where they were calculating, he was genuine. He visited often, always with a kind word and a listening ear. "Emily, my dear, I'm so sorry for what happened. Your family, and you always will be," he'd say, his eyes filled with a sincerity that was rare in his family. His visits were a balm to our aching hearts. He never pushed, never pried, just offered his support and love. It was Mr. Turner who helped us see that life could still be beautiful, that we could rebuild from our loss. Then something miraculous happened. I discovered I was pregnant again. The joy was immediate, but so was the fear. The memory of our loss was still too fresh, too painful. But with Mark and Mr. Turner's support, I allowed myself to feel a cautious hope. Mark's face when I told him about the pregnancy was a mix of happiness and fear. "We're going to be extra careful this time, Em. I'm not letting anything happen to you or our baby," he said. Mr. Turner was overjoyed when he heard the news. "A new beginning," he said, his eyes shining with tears. "This child, Emily, is a blessing, a sign that life goes on, no matter what." But fate had a cruel twist in store. Just when things seemed to be looking up, we received the news. Mr. Turner had passed away unexpectedly. It was a shock that shook us to our core. He had been our rock, our safe harbor in the storm that was his family. The brief period of mourning that followed was overshadowed by the palpable greed of the Turner family. It was like vultures circling, waiting to see what they could claim from Mr. Turner's legacy. As we grieved the loss of a truly good man, it became clear that the battle for the Turner inheritance was just beginning. But in that moment, all I could think about was the baby growing inside me, a symbol of hope in a time of darkness. After Mr. Turner's passing, the atmosphere within the Turner family shifted palpably. The solemnity of mourning was quickly overshadowed by a barely concealed eagerness for the inheritance. It was like watching actors in a poorly scripted play, their grief giving way to greed. Mark and I attended the reading of the will with a sense of dread. The rest of the Turner family was abuzz with anticipation, speculating about their shares of the estate. The lawyer cleared his throat, opening the will. You could have heard a pin drop. Mr. Turner has made some specific allocations in his will, he began, his voice formal and emotionless. As the lawyer read on, shock rippled through the room. Mr. Turner had left a significant portion of his estate to me and our unborn child, ensuring our financial security and independence. David's face was a picture of disbelief and anger. This can't be right. He's leaving money to her and her child. His voice was laced with venom. Mrs. Turner was equally incredulous, her shock mirroring David's. But that's our inheritance. How could he do this? David's voice seethed with anger, his eyes blazing with disbelief. The lawyer, unfazed by the outburst, continued calmly. Mr. Turner was very clear in his intentions. He wanted to ensure that Emily and her child are well taken care of. I sat there, stunned and humbled by Mr. Turner's foresight and kindness. Mark squeezed my hand, his expression a mix of sadness and gratitude. Dad always knew what was right, he whispered. The rest of the reading passed in a blur, with David and Mrs. Turner exchanging whispered arguments and shooting angry glares our way. But something had shifted within me. I felt a newfound strength, a resolve to stand up against their greed and malice. After the reading, the backlash was immediate. You manipulated my father, David accused, his face flushed with rage. I did no such thing, I replied, my voice steady. Your father was a kind man who saw what was happening in his own house. Mrs. Turner tried to interject, but Mark stepped in. Enough. Dad made his choice, and we will respect it. Emily and our child deserve this. As we left the lawyer's office, the weight of the Turner family's animosity bore down on us. But there was also a sense of liberation. We were no longer bound to them, no longer tethered to their toxic world. That day marked a turning point for me. I was no longer the outsider trying to fit in. I was a mother-to-be, a woman with a newfound purpose, ready to protect my family against whatever the Turners might throw our way. The birth of my son was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. After so much pain and loss, holding him in my arms felt like a piece of heaven had been handed to me. His tiny fingers, his soft cries, they were symbols of hope, of a future finally looking bright. Mark was an incredible father, his love and support unwavering. We named our son Ethan, a name that meant strong and enduring. It suited him, and it suited us. A family that had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Meanwhile, the Turner family's world began to crumble. The inheritance, or the lack thereof, hit them hard. David, consumed by greed and anger, found himself embroiled in legal troubles. His shady business dealings, once overlooked due to his father's influence, were now in the spotlight. He faced lawsuits and financial ruin, his fall from grace a stark contrast to his former arrogance. Mrs. Turner's life took a downward spiral as well. Without the financial cushion she was accustomed to, her lavish lifestyle became unsustainable. The friends she once hosted with such grandeur began to distance themselves, leaving her in a lonely, self-made exile. As for Mark and me, we built a life filled with love and laughter, far from the toxic environment of the Turner estate. I started a small business, something I had always dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. To my joy and surprise, it flourished. Mark found success in his career too, his integrity and hard work paying off. We were a team in every sense of the word, building a life on our terms, away from the shadows of the Turner legacy. One evening, as I watched Ethan play, Mark came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "We did it, Em. We made it through," he said softly. I leaned back into his embrace, a smile in my voice. "We did," I replied, "and we have so much to be thankful for." Looking back, the journey was anything but easy. There were moments of despair, of heartache, but there were also moments of incredible strength, of love that refused to be diminished. In the end, Justice was served, not just in the downfall of the Turners, but in the life we built out of the ashes of that ordeal. We found joy, not in their misery, but in our own triumph, in our ability to rise above and create something beautiful out of something so broken. The story has reached its conclusion, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. But before you go, I have a question for you. In a world filled with challenges and difficult decisions, what do you believe is the true measure of victory? Is it revenge or the ability to find peace and build a better life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's have a thoughtful discussion. And if you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more captivating stories and engaging discussions. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to see your opinions in the comments. Thanks for watching.